Hello everyone and welcome back to The Interview. I'm your host, Susan Lee MacDonald. Yoga is a form of mental, spiritual, and physical practice that has been around for over 5,000 years. So many people nowadays are really into the practice of yoga in its various forms and are getting great benefits from it. Today, I'll be interviewing Leah Kim, who is a yogini devoted to yoga. We're going to learn a lot about yoga from her, what she's been up to, and we'll see how you will be affected by yoga today.
Leah Kim's life changed completely after finding her calling in yoga. As Nike's global ambassador for yoga, she has traveled extensively, undertaking diverse projects and training yoga instructors for the past 4 years. The veteran instructor with more than 10 years' experience in teaching yoga has numerous followers in Hong Kong. Through yoga, Leah Kim opened a brand new chapter in her life, filled with a sense of satisfaction and rewarding experiences. She gave up a well-respected job and financial security to pursue something that she truly enjoyed. So, what does yoga mean to Leah Kim?
Leah, I'd like to welcome you to The Interview. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you for having me.
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yoga has become so popular in recent years, and it's been a phenomenon throughout the world, so not just in India and in Asia, but all over. Would you be able to tell us the difference between what classical yoga is versus what modern yoga is as it's practiced?
I can certainly give you my understanding of it. Classical yoga, as it was in ancient times, was between teacher and student. It was one-to-one for the most part, and oftentimes a student would go to the teacher's home, maybe even live there on a long-term basis, and you would have particular yoga program or sequence even designed for you individually, and you would work just on that one-on-one basis. Now it's because there's so many more people practicing yoga, and I think following the way exercise classes go, or just classes in general go in the West, yoga will be taught more in a group class format. I started with being one out of 100 students with one teacher, and I think that was in the very, very high heyday of yoga in Santa Monica. And now that there's so many more studios open, it's not as crowded. But I mean, I think yoga has evolved as more people and more cultures have become interested in it, which I think it needs to, like with anything, like with any phenomenon. As it evolves, it pulls in the knowledge, wisdom, energy, spirit, intention of all the different people who are interested and who are part of what yoga is. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I'm sure that a lot of people know about yoga, and I'd love to hear from a yogini like yourself. What is yoga?
Yeah, big question. Yoga is a lot of things, from exercise to meditation to just a time out for yourself to connect with yourself and find some balance in your life.
Nice. So it's been around for a really long time, over 5,000-6,000 years.
Yeah.
So there are people all over the world practicing yoga nowadays and from time immemorial. What would you say are some of the benefits of yoga?
Well, I know for me, the more I practiced yoga, the more content I felt, the more peaceful, and it just made me want to be a nicer, better person.
Were you not before? You seem like such a nice person.
Maybe that's the yoga, but and I think you feel more internally connected to who you are, and if you have a lot of things going on in your life and you feel really spread thin, yoga is a way to just bring it back to yourself.
You know, the name of this program, as you know, is the INNERview. So maybe this is really appropriate to
It is,
have
yeah, it's perfect,
a yoga
actually.
teacher here to
Yeah.
talk about, you
Yeah.
know, what it is about yoga that really brings out your strengths and how you can work on, you know, who you are as a person, as well as doing the, you know, amazing kind of physical practice that a lot of
Yeah.
people know yoga for.
Yeah. The physical stuff is really important, and as a teacher in this modern age, obviously a lot of what I do is teaching the postures. The beautiful thing is that there's just a connection between mind and body. This is what yogis believe. And whether you go in the mind route or the body route, you get to the same place, which is you get to your core. So there's just so much good stuff to be experienced in all the different entry points.
Fantastic. Well, I definitely want to hear more about your background, and this show of the INNERview is going to be focused on yoga, on how you can help the people who are watching this show know more about yoga, because it's become something that is not just a trend, not just a sensational thing. It's been around for so long, and so there must be something really whole and holistic about this.
Yeah.
So we want to hear from your perspective all about yoga.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think just the fact that it is so popular and trendy is testament to how powerful and magical the practice is. I think it just brings a focus back to yourself and your needs, and also focusing on accepting yourself as you are. So all these things that are quite different from what modern culture tells us, which is that you aren't good enough, you aren't smart enough, that you're in competition with other people, and there's a real emphasis on reaching goals and winning awards and being the best, and all that is good and important, and I think can be a very beneficial drive to us as human beings, but it's just out of balance. So yoga gives you the opportunity to bring it back and to say, hey, actually you're pretty awesome the way you are.
You know, it's so important as just people that we accept ourselves as we are, because there are so many different standards. The standards of beauty that are different in every country. There are standards of you know, intelligence and what we should be achieving, and everything is about achieving the certain goal. But you know, it seems like what you're saying is that yoga kind of doesn't focus on the outward and the goals, and it's not outward oriented, but that it's more internal. What would you say about
it
that?
Absolutely is internal, although not always is that understood, because it looks from the outside to somebody who might be new to it, it could look like, oh, you want to achieve this perfect looking posture, but the more you practice, the more you actually realize that it's completely internal. It asks you to take time with yourself and look at yourself and be accepting on the one hand, but also look at yourself and see what maybe you could improve or just shed light on. A lot of us have unconscious tendencies that aren't great, that maybe we are too hard on ourselves or we're really judgmental or things like this, and it just asks you to take a step back and look at that and see what do you want to continue on and keep strong, and what maybe do you want to start letting go of.
In modern times, yoga focuses on diverse postures and movements in pursuit of external beauty. But Leah Kim emphasizes the importance of practicing yoga as a way to connect to the mind, body, and soul. This is based on her personal experience of how beauty must start as something internal before it can be externally manifested. And yoga, she claims, is the perfect way to find inner peace and calm.
So what type of yoga do you practice? And actually, could you run us through a basic list of what types of yoga, especially the physical practices of yoga, are available?
Yeah, so I practice vinyasa flow. Sometimes that's called power yoga as well. I think they're quite similar. And it comes from the Ashtanga vinyasa flow lineage. And there are also, I mean, there's endless styles of yoga now as everyone comes out with their own branded sequence. But I consider the common styles to be, or popular styles to be Iyengar, which is very alignment focused, more static poses, using lots of props to help. And there's also, well, the Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga that I mentioned is a sequenced practice that is much more dynamic. And there's restorative and yin yoga, which is much slower, where you might hold poses for anywhere from 2 to 15 minutes. There's hot yoga, which is done in a heated room. And what are the other main popular ones? Hatha yoga refers to the physical practice of yoga, so any type. But if you see hatha yoga on a schedule, it tends to be maybe more of a yoga basics with static postures.
So why did you choose to do a vinyasa flow, more ashtanga, more what people would call, more cardio-based yoga? It's pretty intense, no?
It is definitely. I think it would be the most dynamic style of yoga available. It just happened to be the one that, because I've been doing yoga for many years, on and off, not a super committed practitioner, just part of my exercise regimen. But it was Vinyasa flow that really got me, and part of it was because it was my teacher, that it was a style that my teacher taught. And I liked that it was physically challenging. It really pulls you into the moment, and I liked building heat from the inside out. And for me, I was very hyperactive, and it just had a lot of energy to burn through. So for someone like me, it's what got me more quiet. So I think it really depends on why somebody chooses a certain kind. But
interesting. Leah, from an average person's perspective, when they look at yoga, they see all the difficult movements. I guess it seems that to be considered a yogi or yogini, that you've got to put your body in really crazy kinds of positions that are not typically, natural for any person. So does that necessarily mean that you're a good yogi or yogini if you do that? Or what would be the definition of a good practitioner?
Yeah, it's a very common presumption that in order to be a practitioner of yoga, you have to be flexible. But the flexibility factor is firstly really personal. Our bodies all are very different, and some people are naturally more flexible than others. And we all have a limitation, a degree of flexibility. So it's a byproduct of having a consistent practice, but it's not the point. The point, in my opinion, is, does it improve your life? Does it improve your mindset? Does it make you a better person to the people you affect in your life? Does it make you feel more connected to yourself? These are the things that are more important than how open are your hips or how flexible are your hamstrings. At the end of the day, that is so irrelevant to your life.
It seems like you've really got a great passion for yoga. And I'm wondering where that passion comes from.
That's a good question. I don't know where it comes from. I have no sports background, no dance background. I was a bookworm. I exercised, but honestly it was to not get fat. That was why I exercised, like a lot of people do maybe. So I didn't have any. It's almost like it came out of nowhere where yoga and I connected, but it was just something inexplicable, I think, just deep within, that it spoke to me, and it made me feel more me than I had ever felt, than anything else I'd ever done. From getting good grades in school to going for the types of jobs I was going for. It was just something that, not that it was easy, not that the physical practice was easy, but the understanding what yoga is was effortless.
You're also involved in a wide range of activities. Can you tell us about what you're involved in these days?
Yeah, so I lead teacher trainings.
Okay.
The studio that I've been doing those out of is Home Yoga in Singapore. So I create and lead the 200-hour teacher training program, and that's been amazing, just to guide yoga teacher hopefuls through a 3-week intensive. And
So are they practicing yoga every day for 3 weeks?
yeah, they do hours and hours of practice.
Okay.
But in addition to the physical practice, they also do, they also sit in on lectures from anatomy to meditation to breath work and history, philosophy.
Seems very involved.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It is. And a lot of them had never had exposure to that yet. So to see them go through that process, and it can be quite transformative. Some people will become yoga teachers from that, or some people might not become teachers, but will just have a deeper understanding. So that's a big part of my work right now. And also teach classes locally in London, where I'm based.
Okay.
And I teach in studios and gyms and at Nike. And my biggest work is with Nike, and I create programs for them. Right now, we're about to introduce a program for runners.
Okay.
And that
So
should be
yoga
pretty
for
good.
runners?
Well, it's basically Nike is sponsoring several women's marathons in Europe. And obviously Nike is very sport driven, but they understand the importance, the necessity of yoga. So they've asked me to create sequences that runners can use as part of their training for these
Great.
marathons. And that will be coming up soon.
Fantastic. Leah, as Nike's ambassador for yoga, you have a lot of different activities that you do with them. So tell us specifically, what are you involved with?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I am maybe known for within Nike is developing yoga programs for Nike Training Club, which is the app on iPhone. And that was my first major project with them, introducing yoga to people that are maybe more fitness minded. And Nike saw from the success of that how important yoga is, even to non-yoga people. And from that, we developed Nike Training Club Live. So mine is Nike Training Club Yoga Live, where we do weekly classes, as well as big events. So being based in London and with the Olympics having happened last year, there was a lot of activation prior to. So one of the coolest things we did, I think to this day, the coolest place I've ever taught yoga was on the London Eye.
Oh, wow.
So we went in there and did a yoga session while the London Eye was going around, and it was amazing. So introducing yoga to a completely different audience is one of my favorite things about being involved with Nike. And
Sounds like you're doing quite a lot of traveling too. Is that a big part of your job?
Definitely. I have been in, and there's travel that Nike sends me on, but there's also travel that's not related to Nike that I do just within my yoga work in general. But in the past month, I've been in Singapore, Hong Kong, and now here in Seoul. And in June, I will be in Rome, Stockholm, and the south of France.
Wow.
So it's pretty good.
Tough life.
Yes, I'm
Everyone who does yoga should have it so good. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
I'm very, I feel very lucky for sure.
That's great. You know, you are the one and only person that this large sports brand has selected as the PR ambassador for yoga. And what do you think it is about your personal qualities that they saw in you and wanted you to speak on their behalf for yoga?
Well, one of the first things that they said to me when I first got that email, and I had phone conversations all day, and 2 days later they put me on a plane and I went to their global headquarters in Oregon and met a bunch of executives. And one of the first things they said that made them want to work with me was that they felt that I really lived the yoga. That was initially based on my blog, just this little blog that I had where I just did my musings, and then when they met me, they said that it was confirmed. They could tell from just how I am, I guess, that it was not something that I do, but really something that I live and live by. And they said to me, and this was something that was a relief and made me really happy and respect the brand more. They said for me to just be myself, that there was nothing about me as a yogi or a teacher that I needed to edit or soften, because sometimes yoga can seem quite foreign to people.
Sure.
They were just like, you do exactly as you feel comfortable, be authentic. And actually I remember feeling quite emotional when they said that, because it was exactly what I wanted to hear. Because obviously working with Nike is an enormous opportunity, but I had the thought to myself that if they were going to edit me in any way or ask me to be more mainstream or you know, keep it only about exercise, I didn't know if I was going to be able to go through with it. So it was amazing that they wanted that, and I guess because they saw that in me, they wanted me to work with them.
Leah Kim was frustrated in finance, realizing that that was not her calling. She followed her passion for yoga and later was given an opportunity to work for Nike as their only global ambassador for yoga. As the spokesperson for Nike's yoga program, Leah Kim travels extensively and shares her love for yoga with the world. She's been pouring her heart and soul into yoga since day one, and as a result, she's had the opportunity to develop various yoga programs and still undertakes new challenges to help others gain a deeper understanding of yoga.
When most people think of yoga, as we had mentioned before, they think of all these different poses, and I think you call them asanas, right? And you need a mat to do it, you need some space and be prepared to sweat. Are there any yoga moves that you might be able to show us for people who might have a limited amount of space to move in and maybe just even sitting down?
This is a very good question, because I travel a lot. I'm in hotel rooms and they're not always super spacious. And I have practiced in the funniest confined spaces, and you can practice anywhere. Of course, it's convenient if you can unroll a mat and you have some space around, but you really don't need that much. And
so what can we do sitting here?
Sitting down, you could, say you're sitting at your office and you're stuck in an office chair all day. You tend to get pain in your low back just from pressure sitting into your low back. And one way to do that is hip openers, and it's just like how like a guy might sit in a chair and you
I'm wearing a skirt, so I don't know if I can do that.
Susan,
Sorry.
you can't do that. But crossing your ankle over your thigh and sitting with a really tall spine and even folding forward a little bit as you relieve pressure and open up space in your hip, that starts to create more space in your low back. So that's something really nice you can do, and you want to hold it for a little while. You don't want to just do that and switch sides right away.
Could you do a little demonstration of that?
Yeah, so you would do this. And assuming you're not at like a conference meeting, so it wouldn't look really awkward, but you can just fold forward. And for most people, this action alone will start opening the hip. If you're a little more flexible, starting to fold forward and looking for extension through your spine. So extending your chest forward will help. Breathing deeply as you do that. And a lot of people get stress and tension in the neck and shoulders.
Oh yes, that happens to a lot of us here, I think.
Yeah. It's especially as we're in computer age, and we're always
hunched back, right? Like we're typing like this.
It's this shape.
To straighten this, how do you do that?
So firstly, it's the awareness. Check in. Just if you know that you do this, which we all do. Check in. Are you unnecessarily hunching forward? And usually just with the awareness, the intelligence is built in all of us. We know this is not nice. You know that's not nice posture without doing a yoga, even doing a yoga class. So the awareness is number one. And then just looking to lift and lengthen through your chest. A nice shoulder opener is interlacing your fingers behind your back. And kind of shrugging the shoulders up, back, and down. You want to get really wide across your chest, through your collarbones. And if you have more space, you can lift the hands up without hunching over. That's the main thing, is you want to keep the chest lifted and the spine long. That's a good one to do, and it's a small action, but if you hold it, you breathe, you'll start to, from the inside out, repattern the shape of your body. And you don't need to go to some fancy yoga class every day for an hour even. Of course, that's great if you're able to do that, but It's the small, consistent changes that you start to make that will ultimately help and heal and balance the body.
Leah, how did you get started with yoga? Tell us your first experiences in yoga and kind of walk us through what you did with yoga and when you started really getting into it.
My first experience was when I was maybe 14, and I was at a hotel with my family and there was yoga on the schedule, so I went and tried it out and I did not like it. I think I almost fell asleep.
Oh no.
It was just, it was, I think because I was a teenager and you have a lot of energy then, and it was quite a slow type of yoga. And at the time I wrote it off as something that was not for me. But I still I got a couple yoga DVDs that I would do at home here and there. I got to college, to UCLA, and started taking yoga classes on campus. And that I did more regularly because it was taught by like a peer, and it was definitely more dynamic. But what changed for me was when I walked into class with my teacher, Ali. And that was a very lucky moment because she wasn't meant to be teaching that class. She was a last-minute sub for the class.
Who was supposed to be teaching?
It was another teacher named Rudy, who is actually one of my teachers now too. But my friend was a Rudy devotee, and she really wanted me to go to the studio to his class, and finally I went with her, and she was actually really disappointed that he wasn't there. Didn't mean anything to me because I didn't know anyone anyway at that studio, but as soon as Ali started talking, something in me just really opened up, and I loved her instantly. It just really was a powerful moment. And from then on, it became the most important thing. I wanted to be in every one of her classes, and I just wanted to be at the studio all the time. And yeah, that's when I think I really became.
And you were a college student at the time, was that right?
Yes, it was near the end of my college, my last year in college.
Okay, so when you started your last year of college, you must have been thinking about jobs. Like, what kind of studies were you involved in, and were you doing something that was kind of conducive to doing yoga? Was it pushing you to do yoga because you were stressed?
In a way, yes. I studied economics and was looking for a big job in finance, and was having a hard time finding anything that amazing, which in hindsight I realized was a sign, because I do believe that if you're doing the right thing, there should be a flowing quality to it. I don't feel like you should be hitting a lot of closed doors. That's sort of a sign that maybe you're in the wrong place. But as I was working in the office and feeling completely uninspired by what I was doing and quite scared that this could be the rest of my life. You know, sitting in a cubicle, looking at spreadsheets and doing something that just didn't speak to me.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, what I'm doing right now, the way I'm spending my time isn't helping anyone. How am I helping anyone? And as that feeling got stronger, my need for yoga also got stronger.
So when you were at this job that you were, let's face it, not happy, and you were looking for a way out, you decided to do yoga, and you got some solace from doing yoga, it seems.
Yeah, it was my happy place,
Wow.
for sure. I would just want to wrap up work as soon as possible and make sure I could make it to class in the evening. And it just, I felt completely different when I was on the mat versus in the cubicle. And through yoga, you just get to know your own truth. It becomes very clear what is important to you and how you want to spend your life. And it was two things. It was solace, but it was also just that unveiling of what I wanted to do. And for me, it happened to be teach yoga, but I think it works for a lot of people in the similar way, but maybe where their path leads them to is being a presenter.
I heard that you cried while practicing yoga, and it seems like that's a very intense thing to do while you are doing
Exercising.
exercise. What was the reason why you cried, and
I remember
was there some
it.
scar inside that you were remembering?
That first moment that I cried, I was in pigeon pose, and I remember completely the night. I remember being there.
Describe to us what the pigeon pose
Pigeon
is.
pose, it's a hip opener.
Okay.
And yogis believe that you carry a lot of emotion, deep-seated, and oftentimes repressed emotion in your hips. Ali will say the emotions that you sit on, that you don't let rise up and you don't let be expressed. So pigeon pose is a hip opener, and by hip opener I mean something that stretches your hip joint and the muscles around it.
Okay.
And it can be a very sensitive area, and I believe it is because what the yogis believe, that there's the emotional, energetic connection there. So I was in pigeon pose and suddenly started sobbing and was so many things happening at the same time. Firstly, shocked. Who cries during exercise? Secondly, this is not exercise since I'm crying, something else is happening. And thirdly, I'm not gonna lift my head because you're kind of down like that in pigeon. It's like, I'm not gonna lift my head lest somebody see that I'm crying. I was so embarrassed. I think at that time it was tied in with what I was doing work-wise and how unhappy I was. And just the knowing that I needed to change that. Over time, for sure, deeper scars have been accessed, and I think we all have them, you know, childhood pains, and yeah, you can carry around a lot of almost, if you look at it now, it's nonsense, but when you were told something, especially when you're young, it could be really painful. And you can carry that around with you for a long time. And it's not even something that has to come from someone being directly horrible to you, but it could be a thought that you had about yourself.
If you had to say that there was one moment that made you decide to pack your bags and go towards yoga full-time as a teacher, was there one specific aha moment, or was it a natural progression that you just decided to leave that job?
Well, leaving was an aha moment. I actually had two jobs in the finance industry. The first one was investment management for 11 months. I couldn't make it 1 year, which is what all my friends who graduated before me tried to say. Don't leave sooner than a year, otherwise it will be irrelevant on your resume, but I couldn't do it. I left at 11 months. And then I worked at an investor relations firm, but I only lasted there 6 months, and it was a moment when I decided that I needed to leave, but at that point I didn't actually know I was going to go to teaching yoga. I just knew that it was so wrong and I couldn't do it anymore.
Then how did you support yourself? If you left work, did you have like student loans that you had to take care of or anything? Or how was your living situation that you could just leave work?
I was actually really lucky that my parents put me through college.
Nice.
So I didn't have any debt in any way. I did have savings. I had savings for 4 months. So I had a day when I was thinking, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to go in tomorrow and resign. I don't care. I don't care what's going to happen. And I looked at my bank accounts and figured out that I'd be okay for 4 months. I was living with roommates at the time, so the rent situation, we were sharing rent, so it wasn't too bad. And over the 4 months, I did get a job quickly afterwards working in retail, getting $8 an hour or $10 an hour or something, but enough to just have something to buy groceries. But I was just resolved to live as inexpensively as possible and just go from there.
So then when did you decide, okay, I will not only just do yoga like a lot of other people, but I'm going to learn how to teach yoga?
I almost just because I didn't have anything else to do, I was always at the studio. And if I wasn't taking class, I was volunteering, doing anything that they needed, menial tasks like sweeping the floor and taking out garbage.
So
and
super ground up.
I didn't care what I did, I just wanted to be in the space. And to this day, that is my yoga home, this studio in Santa Monica. And when I go in there, I go right back to this time in my life that was so transformative. And as I was just doing more yoga and I got to know my teacher, Ali, better, we would have chats. And I had a list of questions for her one day, and some of them were related to poses, some of them were related to what books can I read to further my practice off the mat on my own. And the meatiest questions were, how did you get to become a teacher? And I didn't really know it consciously at the time, but obviously I was asking her what her path was because I wanted to see if I could potentially become a teacher too, but I was too shy to actually say those words. And she was the one that in that conversation said, you could teach, you should teach.
What do you think it was that she saw in you that she thought you could teach? Was it your dedication because you were sweeping floors and cleaning the toilets and whatever? Or was it because you were really good at the physical practice and you seemed to be kind of enjoying it there?
I think it was dedication. I don't know. I think I now, as a teacher on the other end, I can actually see when I meet people, especially in the teacher trainings, that are natural teachers. It's a quality that it's difficult to explain, but you sort of just know. And I guess she knew, and she was amazing. Before she had even ever witnessed me teaching, she vouched for me. She would put in calls and say, you should audition Leah, you should give her a chance. And because she had such a great, solid reputation, just her call got me in the door to a lot of places. And of course, once I got there, I had to audition and teach, and the managers of the various studios and gyms would have to approve.
Right, and you had to prove yourself. It wasn't just because someone helped you.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, she really, her support was hugely helpful in getting me there, getting me the interview or the audition. But of course, I had to prove myself.
Right.
And luckily, it has always been successful.
Leah Kim, born and raised in the U.S., had a difficult time growing up. During her adolescence, she suffered inner turmoil, comparing herself to the Western standards of beauty. From then on, she had an identity crisis and suffered from constant inner conflict. And it was through yoga that she finally found emotional stability and gained a better understanding of what her purpose is in life. She rediscovered herself by attentively listening to her inner voice. To Leah Kim, practicing yoga is a liberating and healing experience, and in it, she has found her purpose in life.
It's really obvious that you are a real lover of yoga, and I'm curious what your first ever class was like when you first taught.
Oh, when I first taught, I was so scared and had rehearsed my plan sequence with my friends a couple times. They were my guinea pigs. And I came to the class with a sheet with the outline, bullet points of what my sequence would be, as well as note cards that I had in my little pocket with all the teaching points. So the pose on one side and what you can say on the other, and was very scared. But as I started teaching, it was normal, it was natural. And I hit a moment where I veered off my planned sequence because it just flowed. And I already hadn't really been looking at my papers, but I knew as I was teaching something, wait a minute, this is not part of my plan. What am I gonna do? And I was in the pose, and you can't really do anything at that point. You wanna keep the space and the energy nice for the people who are there, and they don't know that I messed up. So I just kept going, and it turned into something really nice.
Wow.
And I remember coming out of the class and calling a friend who was a fellow teacher, and it was like, it went okay, and I was so happy. And I made notes again for my second class, but didn't look at it at all. So I now just go with what feels right. And
So you go with the flow?
yeah, I go with the flow. Yeah, I do. And some days I feel more connected than others. Some days I'll teach a class and be like, wow, that was really amazing. And it almost felt like it was channeled. And there was sometimes I say things that I'm even like, oh wow, that was nice. Don't know where it came from. And other times I come out thinking, could have been better. But I just go in and teach from the heart, and I'm there for the people who are there, and I think that is enough.
What are your most rewarding moments as a yoga instructor?
There's a lot. Anytime I get a message from somebody, and a lot of people are quite shy. A lot of times after every class, I say, come talk to me, come say hi, ask me questions, and usually only one, maybe two people will do that. But sometimes I'll get a long message from someone about how taking class with me was helpful in some way. And
can you share some of the details without the person's name?
Yeah. Well, most recently I had a message from one of my trainees, actually, who I was spending every day with, 12 hours a day. She's very quiet, and she started the email with, I know I'm really quiet, but I just communicate better through words, so you'll probably get lots of emails from me, if that's okay. And she shared with me how she realized through the training and through spending time with me and doing everything we're doing, that she is actually a really good person. She realized that she had been feeling like a bad person, and through the short amount of time that we had, she realized that she's not a bad person. And so something like that is amazing to be a part, and it's nothing to do with me, it's just we're there together and we are supporting each other as fellow yogis. And I think just from that very positive, supportive, loving environment, people put their guards down, and they can be more honest with themselves. And being a part of that is incredible. And more so than getting you to touch your toes or stick your ankle behind your head, that stuff is fun. And I think if it pulls you away from stresses in your life, awesome, do more of that if it has that beneficial effect. But the powerful stuff is more that internal stuff.
you've inspired a lot of students to become yoga instructors, and I'm curious, what do you say to the students who really want to make this their career, and what do they need in order to become an instructor?
Yeah, what I say to them is, firstly, I sincerely believe that whatever you want to do, you can do. It might take time, you might have to be patient, and you definitely will have to work hard.
Do you think that you'll be doing yoga until you're a certain age, or will you do it until you're 90 something?
I hope to be doing it my whole life. There's some, I don't know if you've ever seen some pictures of some 90-year-olds doing yoga and doing really impressive movements, and such a beautiful role model to what yoga can do for you in your body. And they also, I'm sure, I've only seen photos, but I'm sure they have a youthful energy about them. And one of my cousins who lives in Korea a few years ago said, "So you're almost 30. What are you going to do when you turn 30? Because you can't teach yoga anymore." Because she had it in her mind that it's only something really young people do. Maybe because she might have been connecting it to an aerobics instructor or like a coach or an athlete, which who oftentimes have their careers they peak at a younger age. And I said, "What are you talking about? I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. You know, as long as people will have me teaching for them, I will be teaching." So
I'm so excited to hear more about the plans that you have for the rest of the year and what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, because as someone who seems to be living her dream, living yoga, it's so wonderful to see that you've really followed your heart. And I'm curious where following your heart will lead you through the end of the year and forward.
Hopefully just meeting more like-minded people and making those connections in unexpected places. I got married last year, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And just spending time with my husband and creating a family for sure is a big priority for me. And that's another reason why I love doing what I do, because I have a lot of freedom in my schedule. There'll be times where I'll work really hard, but there'll also be times where I might have more freedom. So it really enables me to kind of carve out my perfect, as balanced as possible, of a life. So I would like to experience as much of life as possible. You know, yoga is certainly a big part, but also just chilling out, you know, and traveling just for fun and seeing my friends back in the States. And I think it's important to enjoy all those different things.
Leah, it's been a pleasure to have you on my show and learn a lot more about yoga. I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching are very curious about what yoga is, even if they haven't done it before, haven't tried it before. And your example of living yoga has, I think, helped a lot of people to know about that.
I hope so. Yeah. I feel like everyone should do at least a little bit of yoga in some way or other.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for being on the interview, and I really hope all the best will happen
Thank
with you.
Thanks so
with your
much.
new family.
Thank you.